Glyphosate causes cancer. It's highly inflammatory, and the majority of wheat in America is Roundup ready. So one of the first things I'm recommending all of my clients, if they're in America particularly, is less harmful if you're in Italy or France or other countries in Europe, because it's not been interfered with like this. So in America, a lot of people can get results just by taking wheat out of their diet, like all forms of wheat, and their gut starts to say thank you, and it starts to repair. I think the moment we interfere with nature, nature interferes with us. That's one of my golden rules in health. We should never interfere with how we're made and how nature created everything. If we stick to nature and adhere to the nature codes, nature's going to love us back.
Welcome to Get Yourself Optimized, a podcast full of secret knowledge that will enable you to reboot and 10x your life. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, author, speaker, online marketer, serial entrepreneur, coach, and a real geek when it comes to biohacking, life hacking, and lifestyle design.
The body speaks to us constantly through symptoms. The question is whether we're listening to its wisdom. My guest on today's show, Neil Cannon, author of The Vitality Code and The Vitality Secret, discovered this truth when he reversed his 30-year battle with eczema by addressing the underlying inflammation rather than masking symptoms. In our conversation, Neil shares how his father's stroke became the catalyst for his own healing journey, an eventual career helping others overcome incurable conditions. We talk about the connection between chronic inflammation and countless health challenges, from autoimmune conditions to neurological issues, while examining how modern food systems and environmental toxins fuel this hidden fire. Neil reveals powerful approaches to healing, including breathwork, cold therapy, bioresonance, and live blood analysis, tools that helped him reverse Lyme disease in just days. We explore also the fascinating intersection between physical health and spiritual awakening, including Neil's own experience with somatic channeling that emerged after detoxification. This episode will awaken you to your body's innate intelligence and reveal how addressing root causes can unlock extraordinary capabilities you never knew you possessed. So without any further ado, on with the show. Neil, it's so great to have you on the show.
Stephan, I'm so excited for our conversation.
Of course. So please, can you share with our listener your miraculous origin story?
Love that question. And clearly you know that everyone who works in holistic health, or everyone has an origin story. And everyone who works in holistic health typically has a story of reversing something incurable or so-called incurable, or they've helped someone reverse something incurable. And I kind of fit into both of those categories because it was actually my father who ended up kind of being my so-called wake-up call, if you will. So I had really bad eczema for about 30 years, and I was always using the same symptom masking treatments, which I just considered standard, Western medicine at the time, steroid creams, which left pigmentation on my skin, prescription moisturizers, and antibiotics for flare-ups. And that was my kind of protocol or treatment plan for 30 years. Then my dad had a stroke, and his stroke kind of made me really question what was going on behind his stroke, because I was thinking, my intuition was telling me that his stroke didn't have to happen. I don't know where it came from. Well, I do know where it came from. It was my intuition, but it was just like an inner knowing. It was like something screaming at me saying his stroke was avoidable. Why did he have this stroke? And I remembered a few years before his stroke, his naturopathic doctor sister, my aunt, obviously, saying to him, Tony, you have chronic inflammation and you need to get the mercury out of your teeth because your blood is toxic. And unfortunately, he didn't listen to her. And he only trusted his private doctor, or his, GP, we call them in England, general practice doctor, and just continued that route. And he had this stroke. So I started researching chronic inflammation because I'd started to see this word written in books I was reading because I was just getting into health. I'd written a book about increasing testosterone naturally for guys. That's around the time when you and I met, actually. So I'd started to see this word inflammation, and quickly I found out it was the underlying cause of the high blood pressure or the hypertension that led to the stroke, and also the asthma he'd had his whole life or since he was 12, and also the eczema I'd had since I was a toddler. So I started to put the pieces of the puzzle together, And very quickly, I decided to go on an anti-inflammatory diet to see if it would help my eczema. And it did very quickly. And so I switched it wasn't just diet, it was lifestyle, anti-inflammatory lifestyle specifically. And very quickly, my skin healed from within instead of using steroid creams and prescription moisturizers and antibiotics. And then I switched my attention to helping people with chronic inflammatory health conditions from 2015 onwards. So that's really my origin story in a nutshell.
So do you have eczema at all, or is it just milder now?
Every now and again, I have a little bit on my skin. So I can't say it's cured. And the reason it might appear is because there might be inflammation again. So I just see the eczema as a symptom indicating something needs to be done. I see any chronic symptom as a messenger, like a symptom from the body communicating that we need to address the cause. So if I ever become inflamed for whatever reason, there can be any number of reasons. Diet's one small piece of the puzzle. There could be anything else causing it. There could be parasites, for example. I went to a great example. About a year ago, I house sat for some friends of mine with 3 dogs in Mexico. They're kind of like family to me, and I chose to live in their beautiful home for a month. And I got a skin flare up within 2 days of being there. And I thought, oh no, I'm allergic to dogs. And I scanned myself with bioresonance, and I realized quickly that I had actually picked up parasites from the dogs, causing this skin irritation throughout my whole body. So I quickly addressed the parasites, and then within about 2 or 3 days, I stopped itching again. So that's just an example of how the body can become inflamed, pretty out of the blue, causing, in my case, a skin reaction. For the most part.
Do you think of the eczema as a blessing, since it's like a canary in a coal mine, helping you notice and address underlying causes that you might not have otherwise noticed?
Absolutely. And I consider my eczema a gift now. I'd never have said that 20 years ago because it felt like a curse. But it's a gift. It's showing me there's something going on. And to your words, if we don't address those more mild symptoms, and eczema isn't always mild, it can be really horrible. It could be all over the body. And some people get topical steroid withdrawal syndrome, which is when your skin becomes dependent on these steroids, and then their whole skin becomes a flaky mess. So people to that extent might hear this and say, how can they consider it a gift? If when we listen to the symptom initially, we can say, okay, why has this arisen? What is my body saying to me? So I can get to work and figure out the cause before something more severe happens down the road, because it's all inflammation. And it's like different levels of inflammation as time goes on, basically, unless we address it.
I remember reading or learning at some point about the Mad Hatters and how they would use mercury, and that, of course, caused mercury poisoning, and then they looked crazy, but it was poison. So if you see deterioration in somebody's brain health, or maybe in brain scans or in their behaviors, then you might check to see if they have heavy metal poisoning. And mercury and the amalgam is one source, but there are plenty of other sources, right?
There are other sources, yes, of mercury, and you can get mercury from fish, for example, and injections. So there's different ways the mercury can get into the body. So heavy metal testing is really important for, I'd say, most of us, really. It's particularly.
Yeah. And what sort of testing do you recommend for heavy metals? Is it some sort of scan, or is it a blood test, or something else? Hair test?
A combination of urine and blood. And also the bioresonance, I recommend. If someone is in America, by the way, I want to do a shout out for Function Health. Dr. Mark Hyman's website explains how all these blood tests work. And you can go just search for heavy metals and you go straight into what he provides. So it's all about empowering us to learn about the blood tests, what they do. Of course, AI really helps. We can just go into ChatGPT and say, hey, can you recommend the best blood test for heavy metals? And it will just tell us, which is really great. Although, of course, we shouldn't just rely on AI. I'm just saying,
Yeah, you can't you can't trust the AI
no, you
because it
can't.
does hallucinate or
Right.
outright lie to us. But other than that, it's great.
Other than that, so cross-check. Okay, maybe I shouldn't say the AI bit. Function Health explains blood tests really well if you join that. And I've got nothing to do with Function Health, by the way. I'm just not affiliated. It's just a great website. But I do think it's really important to understand what blood tests we can do. I've got blog posts written on blood tests from a functional medicine standpoint. I often learn from functional medicine to learn about the best tests to take. So, yeah.
And for our listener who's not familiar with what exactly functional medicine is and how it differs from allopathic medicine, traditional medicine, what is functional medicine?
Functional medicine, the snapshot is, in my view, is about getting to the cause of illness. So it's a more holistic approach where you look at every angle, why the body has fallen out of balance. So, for example, if someone has an autoimmune disease, that's a cause of leaky gut, or a leaky gut is at the cause to a degree under which there are root causes. And a functional medicine approach would typically start by cleaning up the diet and healing the gut. It's remarkable how much change can happen in the body when we start healing the gut. So there's different elements that functional medicine talks about in terms of removing what's causing the harm. You start replenishing, you re-inoculate, you support with supplements, and there's a protocol that's typically used across most functional medicines, which is very similar. Ultimately, it's about testing to find what is causing gut imbalances, leaky gut, or whatever label of symptom the person is experiencing.
So let's take leaky gut as the example here. If somebody is experiencing one of the symptoms of leaky gut is gas or bloating, they might be treated for the symptoms by a regular allopathic doctor. Here, take some Tums or some sort of antacid or something like that. Or perhaps, like, if they're more holistic, maybe it's an enzyme like what's the enzyme that's good for digestion?
Well, there's digestive enzymes, but there's a word as well, I think.
Yeah, there's a fruit one though that in particular. Gosh, what is that?
It's not prophylactic, no. What is it? I can't remember. It's on the tip of my tongue, but it's not coming to me.
Papaya. There we
Okay.
go. So papaya enzyme is something that you might take if you're feeling gassy or kind of got indigestion. But of course, that's dealing more with the symptom and not with the root cause. If you have leaky gut, then perhaps your diet includes things like popcorn every night while you're watching Netflix for hours on end.
Right.
And of course, the popcorn is not good for your gut. All those little kernels, the little shells are very sharp, and then they can cause micro tears in your gut lining, and then you're leaking into places that you're not supposed to.
And if you're in America, GMO, corn is typically GMO, about 85% of it. So the actual grain has been interfered with to add insult to injury. Similar with gluten, which is hybridized, it's gone through mutagenesis. So we can be consuming these things that might be creating the tears in the gut lining, as you say, and not realizing that this is happening over time as well, allowing larger food particles to pass through and other toxins and pathogens to pass through that gut lining and create an inflammatory response where it's almost like your immune system attacks its own tissues. So a lot of it can happen with dietary choices. Yet I would say the true root it's a level higher than diet, I would say. But most people start with diet because it's the easiest way to get results.
Yeah. Thinking about like how our food supply is so messed with, interfered with by big agriculture, and Monsanto in particular with GM corn and Roundup to kill all the weeds, pretty much everything alive that isn't genetically modified to be Roundup ready. It's crazy terminology, but you Google Roundup and you get all these shopping results first thing to buy Roundup, and then you get the Roundup website, and then Wikipedia, and then Microsoft support page, and then some videos, and then finally you start getting stuff like Drug Watch. And it's not until you're like scroll, you even get the word glyphosate.
Right. That's the
showing
word.
up anywhere in the search results. That's kind of evil.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that, because I was wondering if you were going to go there. That's the thing. It causes cancer. Glyphosate causes cancer. It's highly inflammatory. And the majority of wheat in America is Roundup ready. So one of the first things I'm recommending all of my clients, if they're in America particularly, it's less harmful if you're in Italy or France or other countries in Europe, because it's not been interfered with like this. So in America, a lot of people can get results just by taking wheat out of their diet, like all forms of wheat, and their gut starts to say thank you, and it starts to repair. I think the moment we interfere with nature, nature interferes with us. That's one of my golden rules in health. We should never interfere with how we're made and how nature created everything. And if we stick to nature and adhere to the nature codes, nature's going to love us back.
Yeah. And glyphosate is the exact opposite of that.
Exactly.
It's like it's dark stuff. It kills everything.
Yeah. If insects' stomachs explode, if they consume such, it should tell us that maybe it's not good for us as well. There's certain herbicides.
And if no plant can survive it either,
right,
that's a bad sign for our own health.
Absolutely. I don't know if it's glyphosate or another herbicide, but there is a form of herbicide somewhere out there that causes insect stomachs to explode or implode even. But yeah, we need to pay attention to these things for sure.
Yeah. So let's go back to your dad's stroke. Like, what was the protocol, the regimen that you put him on to help him, or was it a little too late where you were learning things kind of too far after the fact?
This is a bit of a sad question. I mean, not a sad question, sad answer. He was not really very open and to make changes. And this is the case with so many of us in holistic health. We try and help our parents, yet they're not really open to making the changes. So I started introducing to them going gluten-free and doing some really basic stuff, wheat and dairy-free. And his sister, his naturopathic doctor sister, was trying to help him for 20 years beforehand. He just wasn't listening, even though she's got, 20 letters after her name. She's the most incredibly knowledgeable person about the human body, probably one of the most knowledgeable people I know about the human body. Yet he wasn't listening to her. And she's been gluten-free for many decades, although she is celiac, which makes it even more strict for her. But she was offering this advice for many years before I started, and I'm his son, so why should he listen to me? Anyway, I did try.
But you probably tried to get him to do a hyperbaric oxygen therapy.
I actually did. Yeah. I was offered unlimited free sessions by a biohacking friend in England. His name's Tim Gray. He does the health optimization summits. He offered my dad unlimited hyperbaric oxygen. And I offered to go with my dad. He said, I'm not doing that. I said, Dad, this is going to help you repair the brain. And as soon as you get into hyperbaric after a stroke, the better. We don't want to wait. We want to go straight into hyperbaric. It wasn't actually straight afterwards. There was a bit of a lag between my finding out about it and his stroke, which was a year or two beforehand, because we're talking a decade ago. So
Mm.
yes, I did provide these options, and I connected him with people who were way more versed than I am, and they could help him rebuild his brain. There's one person in New York who's helped people with strokes rebuild their brain. And the science of epigenetics tells us that every organ will rebuild, provided we create the environment within to allow the body to heal itself and to allow the organs to rebuild. I don't know if we can
Yeah.
regrow a limb, maybe, but if organs have, I'm not saying never. I'll never say never. It might be done at some point. At the moment, we know internal to the body, if an organ is harmed, or for liver cirrhosis, we know it regrows, and we know the brain. We know organs can regrow, provided we create the environment within to allow the body to heal itself. So we need to just
Yeah. Well, neuroplasticity is well demonstrated in research and clinical studies. So even somebody with a traumatic brain injury can have a different part of their brain kind of reallocated by just your body's intelligence to use that, let's say, part of the visual cortex to make up for the deficiency because of the brain injury.
yeah, yes, that's remarkable. Yeah.
Yeah. So what is hyperbaric oxygen therapy?
Pressurized oxygen, ultimately, when you get into a tank, and you will be breathing oxygen under pressure, which saturates all your cells with oxygen. A lot of illness is actually down to under oxygenation of cells. So I recently reversed Lyme in 3 days, by the way. I think you and I have spoken about this. Hyperbaric oxygen was one of the protocols we used amidst many, all stacked on top of the other in a very short period of time, measuring my blood all the time with live blood microscope under a microscope. And I slept in hyperbaric oxygen for 5 hours. So that was interesting, because I thought there's no way I'm going to be able to sleep in this thing. It's so loud, and why would I sleep in this? And I did. So it's a remarkable technology. I remember seeing this when I started researching cancer around 2015, 2016. I lost 3 friends to cancer in the space of a year in 2015, and I attended a live symposium in 2016 by The Truth About Cancer, and they talked about hyperbaric oxygen there. And I learned that it's one of the best things we can do for cancer as well, because if underoxygenation of cells is one of the leading reasons why cancer develops, then it makes sense that if we saturate our cells with oxygen and then starve it dietary from anything that starves it of oxygen, it can really work, like the ketogenic diet as well, which removes all the sugar. So I've just said too much probably on one thing. Hyperbaric
Yeah.
oxygen.
So sugar is
Yeah.
poison. Is it possible to reverse Lyme disease? Does Lyme disease even exist? Some doctors will just never diagnose Lyme disease, even if it's just a textbook case. Like, there's so many things we could unpack here, as
Lyme.
well as the hyperbaric oxygen
Yes,
therapy.
absolutely. So many things. I mean, on that question on Lyme, I interviewed Kerry Kasem, a TV presenter, a few weeks ago. She reversed Lyme, and she told me some, rather unsavory history of Lyme, and how a lot of people have Lyme and it goes undiagnosed, creating all kinds of co-infections. But yeah, we don't have to go down that rabbit hole. It's very interesting.
Yeah, and isn't it possible that you can get shadow banned or kind of deplatformed even by talking about this sort of stuff?
Yes, I would say more so last administration. I was getting shadow banned all the time by talking about anything that wasn't in alignment with the narrative, the mainstream narrative. I find myself getting
Yeah.
less shadow banned now, which is very interesting. So
Oh, that's good.
yeah, because I just thought, okay, I can't talk about anything unless I talk about something very pedestrian, like eat healthy food.
Yeah. You know what I do with all my episodes, I just let go and I let God. I just decide that I'm going to let God take over and pop the questions in my mind, and If I'm meant to cover it, I will. If I'm not meant to cover it, I won't. If there's a certain word that I'm not meant to say because it'll get me, in trouble with an algorithm or something, then I don't end up saying it. I just trust and allow, and magic ensues.
I love that. Love that. Yeah.
So, what exactly is Lyme disease, and how did you come to that conclusion that you had Lyme disease?
So I had no idea I had Lyme, and I've had friends really suffer from it, where it creates all kinds of problems in the body and co-infections. A dear friend of mine who I met in LA maybe a decade ago, she really suffered. Teeth were falling out, severe depression, multiple co-infections. And I just thought, my whole last 10 years working in holistic health, I thought I can work with most labels of chronic inflammation. I'll never work with Lyme because I felt it was just so complex. So I'd often refer people out to someone else like Klinghardt, who's one of the Lyme guys. So Lyme itself is a bacteria. It is in itself an infection. So it does create the inflammation. So it's one of a cause of the inflammation. We didn't talk about that actually. With inflammation, what is it? It's your body's response to toxins, chronic stress, and deficiency. So under the umbrella of toxins, there's some kind of alien intruder in the body. And Lyme is one of the alien intruders, which can enter the body in a multitude of ways, actually. And I thought it was just tick-borne. So I just thought it was a tick-borne bacteria, for which you had to be bitten by a tick for it to actually have an effect. And I've later learned that whilst that might be true in a number of cases, there's other ways that Lyme can be in the body. So Lyme is a bacteria, and apparently it was created. So being mindful of just wanting your podcast to not be censored, let's just say it is suggested that it was man-made and it was used back in certain times to almost like a weapon. So
yeah, bioweapons are very real.
Right, exactly. I didn't know whether to say that word. So thank you.
There's a fascinating book I read many years ago. I think it was called Bioweapon or Biowarfare or whatever. It was all about what happened in the Cold War in between Russia and the U.S. or the Soviet Union and the U.S. in terms of them escalating their bioweapons programs. Each trying to outdo the other.
Right.
Pretty frightening.
Really frightening.
I don't know why I read that book. It didn't make me feel good.
No.
These days I wouldn't read it, but I did like going down dystopian rabbit holes in that kind of era of my life. So
totally.
Thankfully that era is over.
I know it
doesn't serve me.
I get it. I'm in the same thought pattern, or rather, I'm of the same mindset. Yet there's some part of me that still loves digging into these things. So when Kerry Kasem, who I interviewed about Lyme, she recommended me 2 books. One of which is called Bitten, Bitten, as obviously, and it's, I can't remember the subtitle, but something about the history of bioweapons. And the other one is I can't remember what number it is, Lab 257 or something. And there's a location called Lyme, and where this lab was located, where this bacteria was leaked from. And there's a number of very outspoken people talking about this now. And it's useful to know. It's one of the reasons why it's so difficult to get rid of in the body. I was told by the guy that treated me for Lyme that it has its own intelligence. And when I met him initially, coming back to your initial question, at a Conscious Life Expo, he did a live blood analysis on me, and I saw him talk for an hour before I did it. At the time, he was helping other people with various nasal sprays he had. And with me, when he said that there was Lyme all over my blood, he said, I'm not going to give you anything now, but I think you should come back and we'll work on this. And I didn't understand why he didn't give me anything. And when I went back a few weeks later to clean my blood, he said, if I started you then, like I did with everyone else who didn't have Lyme, he said, if I gave you these nasal sprays back then, it would have given the intelligence of Lyme to work, to make a workaround. And I thought that was so interesting. That it's like it has a consciousness. It's like it has a memory and a brain. So,
Well, you know what, in Judaism and Kabbalah, they teach that everything is consciousness. Nothing exists that is not consciousness, because nothing exists that is independent or separate from God. So everything is of God. Therefore, the table that you have your laptop on, the chair you're sitting in, the toy your child is playing with, the microphone you're using, everything is consciousness.
yeah, absolutely. Everything's energy as well.
Yeah.
Einstein.
Yeah, matter is just simply energy slowed way, way down.
Yeah, very much.
You know, when people talk about, who are kind of woo-woo about the density of the 3D experience of being in physical reality is really hard. Well, that energy you're used to operating in the upper worlds with just being light and being able to travel at the speed of thought and communicate telepathically and be everywhere all at once. All that is just slowed way down. And you're like kind of trudging through quicksand or mud all the time.
Absolutely. Love that analogy. Yeah, for sure. Learning about frequency is one of the most beautiful things that I feel that we all end up doing when we're working in holistic health. I think this is why illnesses are often spoken about as an awakening, because they can shift us from a current way of thinking into a whole new level of thinking and abilities and gifts that we all have, that we were born with, that most of us have no idea that we have. And all these, what could be described as
we are so much more powerful than we think,
so much more.
than we give ourselves credit for. But of course,
Yeah.
it's all through the power of God. It's just that God's energy and power is working through us. So we're kind of a delivery agent of God's miracles and His will. And when you let go and let God, that means that you tap into that infinite power.
And on that very subject, I think I've shared with you, I've began to channel, and I've recently learnt the term because this happened in November 2023 initially. I've understood that I am a somatic channeler, which is also available to everyone. So my body is moved by a consciousness other than my own. And when this first happened, it was the most extraordinary feeling. You know, you think about letting go and letting God. It was like my body was a puppet and I was moved by an intelligence far greater than my own and dancing in ways I've never danced before. It was like I was doing ballet. It was extraordinary as my body was just being used by this consciousness, and it's happening more and more frequently. It can be spontaneous. I could be sat at my computer like last Saturday and I heard a song that I loved, and then my hand started doing this, which was the first indication of I'm about to channel. And then I jumped up and began to dance or be danced. And it's this is the kind of stuff that I love that we can get to once we go through the holistic space and we start detoxifying from everything that's keeping us from this. And we're getting these activations, and it's incredible what we can find. It's like, I understand the world of energy is like, it's almost like a reward for going down the holistic health space.
Well, it's actually a birthright. It's part of the divine plan that you are connected to the unseen world. You're connected to God. There is no separation. All separation is illusion. And so when you start tapping into this stuff because you've changed your diet, you've done some detox protocols, maybe decalcified your pineal gland, etc., and you have purity of thought and high vibration intention in everything you do, say, and think, then everything shifts and you become a like a well powered antenna, a high power antenna to receive infinite intelligence. I remember one of the first experiences I had that just blew my mind, and just it was incredible. Was I did automatic writing. So this
Yes,
was
I do
in
this.
2021, early in my journey of exploring my psychic abilities, and I asked for guidance on a past life past life regression hypnotherapist to work with, because the one that I and my wife had worked with, we had some mixed results, and we decided to stop working with her. I had no idea who to go to, but I decided, well, let's try the automatic writing thing. And I wrote in cursive, and I wrote the name. It looked like Betty, but the name, the last name looked more like Linder, like a cursive L. But when I typed into Google the name, past life regression, and then I started typing in Betty, and then it auto completed the rest of it, or showed it as the first result, autocomplete result, Betty Binder. And I was like mind blown. Like, it was very clearly the name out of the blue that I'd never heard before. Very famous, I guess, in the 1980s, but not popular name in the past life regression world. And these days, she was in her 80s and pretty much retired. So it turns out that I was able to contact her, and she's been on the podcast,
No way.
and
Brilliant.
I did multiple sessions with her, and I referred several people to her. And that would never have occurred if I hadn't trusted that I can get guidance from above.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. It's what a beautiful story. Talking of automatic writing, it's actually one of the ways I'm also getting closer and closer to the channel. And one of our fellow breathing brothers, you and I met in a men's group, and part of that men's group, I run a breathwork session, or 5 days a week. I
And
run
that's every day, right?
every day.
Every single morning?
Yeah. And there's very interesting things happening in the group. Like, we're experiencing, a number of us are experiencing very non-human stuff. And the breath work, like the consistency of doing the breath work, is where the magic is lying. And one of our breathing brothers, called David, has started to channel write for us, an automatic write. And this was maybe 2.5 years ago, when he was 18 months into doing the breath work. It spontaneously started to happen. So every day he provides us with a message from consciousness, from a greater mind. We can tell it's not his own. That's very obvious. And obvious, sometimes it's for one person in the group, otherwise it's for the collective in the group or for the greater collective. But it's very, very interesting what's coming through him. And we all love hearing his messages at the end. And of course, we can all do this. We can all train ourselves to do automatic writing or channel writing, whatever you want to call it. And then it's almost undeniable at a certain stage that it's coming through us as a conduit rather than our brain. It comes from the
Yeah.
greater mind. Yeah.
So I just want to give you kudos for running this subgroup inside of Metal for, I don't know how many years, several years at least, for free.
Yeah.
It's not even your mastermind; it's Ken Rutkowski's, and you're just such a service to the community, providing that. I've been on the calls a number of times, and it's based on Wim Hof, on his breathing program. Do you want to talk a little bit about Wim Hof and breath work and its benefits? Wim Hof is on my dream list of people I want to have on the podcast. Haven't had him on yet, but I'm still holding out hope.
I'm sure you will. Knowing you'll manifest him, I'm sure. Yeah, he's a wonderful guy, and I haven't done a personal retreat with him like one of his private small group retreats yet. but I have met him at one of his conferences with Russell Brand, or rather Russell Brand's event in England a few years ago. He's someone who's done phenomenal things. He's got 26 world records, I believe. He's doing things that would otherwise be described as superhuman. He had E. coli injected into him, and through the power of his mind, by connecting with his breath, with his mind over matter, was able to just basically allow this toxin to pass out of his system. And then he said, look, anyone can do this. And he trained a bunch of people to do the same thing. And he's really showing us what we're able to do by really connecting to a greater mind through breath and through cold therapy. So breath work.
And he's some of the world records he's broken are like the amount of time under water in ice cold water without taking a breath.
Yeah,
I think that's one of his world records.
Yes.
And amount of cold exposure in his shorts without a shirt, in freezing cold temperatures for crazy extended periods of time. Totally fine, no frostbite, no signs that he was affected in any negative way as far as his body. It's just incredible.
Yeah, he's shown that he could regulate his own body temperature, regardless of the external temperature, which is remarkable. And yes, to the effect of his world records, he's also done marathons in his underpants and climbed summits in, freezing cold summits in his underpants. And then he trains loads of other people to do the same thing. So he's really showing us.
And no socks and shoes either, right?
Yeah, no socks, no shoes. And he's done it in the desert, showing that we, what we can do. It's the kind of stuff that would probably, cause a lot of people to lose their lives. And he's showing what we can do. So with breath and with cold therapy, the Wim Hof method is typically 3 pillars: is breath work, cold therapy, and your mind. It's commitment with the mind, because of course that the brain is what's going to enable everything. So with daily breath work and daily cold therapy, we can tap into our superhuman, if you will. So with that combination, or with one of them, in this group, I launched it in October 2020 during COVID for our community to help our brothers with their immune systems, because breath work alone is brilliant for bringing inflammation down. It's great for cleaning the blood, for oxygenating every cell. It's good for the mind. It's good for the emotions, for your soul. It completely resets us mentally, emotionally, spiritually every day, every morning. But the real reason I started that was to really support people in their immune systems, because if you're chronically inflamed, that's one of the reasons why we have a compromised immune system. So if we can reduce inflammation and then add all the other stuff to it, like an anti-inflammatory diet and lifestyle and sunlight and grounding and all the other magic, all the nature's magic, we can bring inflammation down. So yes, breath work brings inflammation down. Cold therapy brings inflammation down. Cold therapy supports blood flow. Get a nice dopamine hit from it. It's good for injury repair and recovery. It really speeds things up. It can bring swelling down. It can bring, reduce pain after injury. And there is a multitude of benefits to both breath work and cold therapy, whether it's having cold showers or submerging in an ice bath. There are benefits to cold therapy and breath work alone. And then when you combine them, you get this compounded effect. So I must say a quick caveat.
Of course, we're going to throw in at some point here, we need to say that, consult your doctor. This is not medical advice. Don't sue us.
I'm about to say that very thing. It's not for everyone. And it's particularly with people with heart problems should not be doing cold therapy, or anything really severe should not be doing cold therapy, because it's a big stressor on the nervous system. So in fact, there's for certain women as well. Women don't apparently respond to the cold as well as men. So we just have different biologies. So we need to be aware of that.
Yeah, and not all stress is created equal. So there's eustress, there's good stress, and then there's bad stress that can trigger hormones that kind of hijack our nervous systems.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I know we're getting close to time, so I want to make sure we have enough time to talk a bit more about bioresonance. But before we do, first of all, to wrap up this little discussion about Wim Hof, if there's a video for our listener to maybe use as a starting point to try like a 15-minute exercise of a few rounds of the breath work led by Wim Hof, maybe we could share that in the show notes for this episode, and then they can try that out.
I've got one featured on my website. I believe the URL is vitalitysecret.com/breath. And we can also include that in the notes. I mean, you can.
Yeah, we'll include that in the show notes. We'll embed the video as well.
Oh, great.
In the show notes. And highly recommend it. For my personal experience, it's been really good. Of course, this isn't medical advice, so your results will vary. Now, you mentioned live blood analysis at some point in our conversation, and how you had somebody at an event look at your blood, and I've had it done. I've spoken about it a couple of times on this podcast, but it's been a while. So maybe if you could kind of quickly define what that is and what some of the benefits can be for having a live blood analysis done.
Yes, I can speak to that for sure. It's one of the best ways I believe we can get a marker for our health. I came across it initially in 2018 or 2019 when I started going down the EMF route, exploring EMFs and the effects of EMFs on our cells. And I saw so many demonstrations using live blood analysis, what happens to our cells when exposed to cell phone radiation or Wi-Fi radiation or whatever kind of dirty electricity. And you can see what happens to cells very clearly under a microscope. And there's different types of live blood analysis microscopes. Some I think it's called dark field energy, or there's different technical terms. Forgive me, I can't remember the actual terminology for the actual.
A dark field microscopy. Is that what it is?
Thank you. Dark field microscopy. So you can take a blood sample, a quick fingerprint of the blood, and you put it on a Petri dish or a slide. You put it under the microscope, and you can see what's going on in the blood. So at this event in LA in February, there was a guy there who first did a talk, and I really saw his heart. I felt his heart. He actually helped his son reverse or heal from autism, believe it or not. And his son was not able to function. I've since learned there are different types of autism, and there's one that's like a superpower, and there's one that's actually, it looks more like the brain has been harmed. And his son was not able to function, like completely not, dysfunctional. So he actually said a prayer to God, and he said, God, if you help me heal my son, I will help anyone who walks through my door. And sure enough, he did. And through lots and lots and lots of detoxification, was able to heal his son and clean the blood, which then helped to clean the brain. And
what's the doctor's name?
Stan Kurtz. Sorry, he's not a doctor. Got to be careful there. Okay. Not a doctor. He's self-learned through his son, who had really serious health problems.
Okay.
Like we were saying at the beginning, it's often someone close to us who causes us to do a deep dive. So yes, he's not a doctor. I just want to be clear with that. And
got it.
He is he's a remarkable guy, and so his son is now 27 and fully functioning, doing brilliantly, and he was unable to do anything as a kid. So that was his story into it. And then he's now helped people with lots of different labels of illnesses. And Lyme appears to be one of the most common things he's dealing with. He said he tested, out of everyone he tested at this expo, about 90% of them had a degree of Lyme in them. And mine wasn't just a little degree of Lyme. It was all of my blood was covered in Lyme. And it was remarkable, because I'm thinking, how am I able to function? And I guess it's because of everything else I'm doing. And there was also leukemia cells present. And he said, the pattern in your blood shows what could progress. He's very careful with his wording. He said, this appears to me as though it looked like a pattern that I've seen before, where Lyme turns into leukemia. And I could see the leukemia cells in my blood, and I was able to cross-check. It looked like hairy cell leukemia. So I didn't bat an eyelid, and I thought, I'm going to address that. One of my friends from home actually had leukemia, and he went down the medical route, and for many, many years. I wanted to do it a different way. So we cleaned the blood over 3 days, and the live blood analysis was our gateway into doing it. And being there, I was with maybe 4 or 5 other women, for whatever reason, mostly women when I was there. And I believe 3 out of 4 of them, or even all of them, I'm trying to remember now, this is February, had been injured by the COVID vaccine. And he showed the blood of what happens with the COVID vaccine compared with once you've cleaned the blood. And I've got video footage of someone who had Alzheimer's and she was COVID vaccinated. And then after 3 days, she left with clean blood and her brain started working again. So it's all of these.
So when you say the blood was cleaned, how was that done?
So we did it with a multitude of treatments, and it was different for every person. So like I mentioned, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, Rife frequencies was huge. I saw my blood change. We tested my blood before I stood in front of this Rife machine and afterwards, and I could see a profound change in the number of cells affected by Lyme in 30 minutes. And he said, okay, for you, I'd like you to stay here for the next, he didn't say I was going to be there for 4 hours, but I ended up being by this Rife machine with no distractions. I couldn't have my phone, of course, because it was frequency. And I basically just meditated for 4 hours in front of this Rife machine with all these different Lyme frequencies. And it was night and day different, even just with the Rife. However, it wasn't just Rife. Yeah. We did Rife on top of hyperbaric oxygen. I did ozone therapy in the neck, like high dose ozone in the neck. I did methylene blue, which is something I felt uncomfortable about, to be completely honest. I'm not a fan of anything synthetic, yet I did use it for 2 of the 3 days. We did Amazonian root ceremonies. He's got these blends from the Amazon, which we did 2 ceremonies in the evening. We did detox foot spas with these salts that drew the heavy metals and worms out of our feet. I didn't know we had worms in our feet. Apparently we do. And cleaning the blood, kind of extracting the blood, and through various ways. We did antiparasitic drinks and antibacterial drinks, these cocktails he's created over his years that do things really fast. His motto is, if it's not simple, it's not true. And I really love that because I love simplifying health. I think health has been overcomplicated, almost by design. I don't think we were designed to need a PhD to heal ourselves. I think we just need to figure out why the body's got toxic, why we're inflamed, and get to the cause through a number of testing, and then figure out how we can use nature or biohacks to help us to heal again. So he's got this protocol, and biohacks are often just reflecting nature anyway, just in a very cool way in your home. Instead of lying on the beach, you lie on a sleeping mat, or rather a grounding mat. And instead of going out in the sun, you have infrared light. Or, there's a number of biohacks which are just mimicking nature in your home in a city. So there's some things that are pretty inexpensive. So,
Are you familiar with the amp coil? Speaking of things like grounding mats.
I am. Yeah, I've used it. That's
okay. You like it?
I only used it once or twice at a friend's place who's in fact one of our mutual brothers, Richard Nuts. He had one, and his wife reversed rheumatoid arthritis, so they had a number of these devices in their home. I think it's great. It seems to be one of the better ones because there's so many different types of frequency technology that we can use. We want one.
I like the amp coil personally. I have one.
Oh, nice.
And Aaron Bigelow, the founder of amp coil, is a past guest on the show. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I love their interface. I love everything that they've created. It feels good. It feels like a really well-designed piece of kit.
Yeah. Now it's different from a Rife machine. Rife, by the way, for somebody who's not heard of that term, is RIFE, and this device has been around for many, many decades, right?
Early 30s, Royal Roman Rife found that if you match the frequency of cancer cells, you can obliterate the cancer tumors. So it's all done with sound and frequency. Yeah, it's remarkable. He had a very small sample size. I believe it was 16, but he found, I believe the success rate was 100%. So, and now all of these machines are coming back. There's in the form of bioresonance. So a lot of these bioresonance machines or devices use rife frequencies within them. My own software uses rife frequencies. Not all of them are rife, but some of them are. And the one I used at this center in Simi Valley it was a machine with it looked like a big long bulb, and it was a very, very high powered rife machine where you'd program in the specific frequencies from whatever research, and you would just sit by that one frequency for 15, 20, 30 minutes. So there's different types of rife that you can get, and they're remarkable. Imagine knowing that everything in the body is a frequency, including every toxin, every bacteria, every parasite, every fungi, every label of toxin, including every organ and tissue and muscle, bone, everything has a frequency. So knowing that we are made of frequency and energy, we can use these bioresonance devices to tune into the frequency that the body is naturally emitting. And we can get a reading, first of all, with these bioresonance devices, and then we can use the frequencies to then rebalance. So it's remarkable what we can do in the world of energy medicine diagnostics. And, there's just, the technology is just remarkable. So bioresonance is one of my favorite things these days. Combined with that,
that's
AI.
great. And even just listening to frequencies, maybe while you're meditating or going to sleep, can make a difference for you. Like certain frequencies, such as I think it's 432 hertz, is good for your health. And then there's the bad frequencies that are purposefully put into the music that is popular these days, which is really
That's a rabbit hole.
not a nice thing.
Yeah. Yes, there's the frequencies we can listen to. We can heal with. If we know that parasites have a certain frequency, then we can listen to those overnight, and we can just kind of see what happens. And even one of our fellow breathing brothers a few days ago was listening to a frequency to support his adrenal glands. And even in 20 minutes, whilst we were breathing, he said, I feel completely different. Like he was energized. He's 82, Terry. And he's one of the most vital 82-year-old men I know. He's using all these devices. He actually reversed a spinal cord injury. So he's a very tapped in, very tuned in guy. So yeah, he's using the frequencies, and we can use them for any number of things. If we're feeling brain fog, we can listen to frequencies to help awaken the brain again. We can listen to.
Well, there's also the brain tap device, which will emit light while your eyes are closed, but it's flashing lights while you're listening to these frequencies and getting guided visualization meditation. And it's called the brain tap device. Dr. Patrick Porter is the creator of that, past guest on this podcast. But yeah, we've got one of those devices too.
The Lyme community, I'm hearing about that kind of sum of money being spent a lot. So, because they're using everything they can possibly use, and it can get very expensive. That's why I quite like this guy in Simi Valley. It's like you just do all these things in one, stacking them all on top of each other consecutively for several days, and monitoring the blood as you're doing it. Because sometimes people will do ozone 1 week, and then a month later they do rife, and then 3 weeks later they do amp coil. Or you might do amp coil, you might buy it and do it every day. But sometimes these things are stacked too far apart from each other, and it's this synergistic effect with them all on top of each other. That's where we can get real, accelerated healing. That's kind of how I perceive it anyway.
Yeah. I know we're out of time here, but if our listener wants to learn more from you, and you're just such an amazing source of knowledge and inspiration and wisdom about so many topics relating to health and wellness, where would you point them to for kind of the next step? Maybe it's your books, maybe it's your website. You have an online community and course as well.
Yeah, my latest book is the Vitality Code. I don't know if it's going to be seen on video, but it's the Vitality Code. That's the 2023 version. That's on Amazon. The Vitality Secret, if someone's just starting off and wants to know all about inflammation being the underlying cause, that was one of the easier ones to get going with. And that's the one my friend our friend who recently reversed stage 2 lymphoma without any medical intervention, he's sending that book to everyone at the moment saying start here. My website is vitalitysecret.com, and that's probably a good place to find me. Or I'm most active on social, on Instagram, at Neil Cannon Vitality.
Awesome. Neil, it's been a pleasure. And you're such a light in the world. Thank you for all that you do to help people to regain, recapture their wellness and their vitality.
Thank you so much, Stephan. I've really been looking forward to this conversation, and I just want to say thank you to you for being a huge support in my life. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And you too. And you too, listener. Thank you for being part of the tribe and part of the movement to change the world and make it a better place and to be a light in the world yourself. So thank you. And we'll catch you in the next episode. In the meantime, have a fantastic week. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off. If you want to hear more conversations like this on awakening your body's natural intelligence, then I recommend episode 468 with Aaron Bigelow, episode 490 with Dr. John Bergman, and episode 431 with Dr. Nicole LaPera. Also, I invite you to check out the show notes, transcript, action-based checklist, and all the URLs mentioned in this interview with Neil Cannon at getyourselfoptimized.com/518. If you enjoyed the conversation, I encourage you to share this episode and, more importantly, the entire show, Get Yourself Optimized, with a friend. Change your life and help me spread the light. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Get Yourself Optimized. Nearly a decade ago, I started a journey that completely transformed my personal life and my business. Now I'm taking on a very select number of high-caliber coaching clients and personally helping them optimize their lives. I have limited spots, so if you're interested, go now to getyourselfoptimized.com and apply for one-on-one coaching or for our high-level mastermind. By the way, if you have any questions or comments whatsoever, email me at host@getyourselfoptimized.com. See you next week.